Okay, and as you all know, you got a press release last week telling you about our ballots that have blurry barcodes. We aren't sure what happened with everything, but we have used this printer for 10 years, and this is the first time there's ever been a problem. And I'm not sure, Chair Smith, how you want to go forward.
I think you should just explain what happened and what the process is going forward.
Okay, rather than just asking questions so that we can
Yes,
answer.
I'd like you to make a statement on, what happened, what you're doing moving forward on the affected ballots. And, yeah.
Okay, well, there is a process in place in the vote by mail manual for duplicating damaged ballots. We just did not have any idea how many. And the first notice we have of this problem was on Tuesday of last week, May 3rd. We started opening ballots to prepare for tally, and then we were putting them in batches of 125, put the batch of 125 through the tally machine, and it kicked out, because it rejected 70 to 80 ballots out of those, with the code that says unable to read barcode. And that's because the barcodes are not dark black, and their lines are not crisp lines like a barcode has. And we checked with the printer, which is what Becky does. She does every little piece and knows all of the reasons for things. And the instant solution we knew we had to do was to duplicate those ballots, because it was too late to reprint and resend. And so that's what we're doing. As the tally machine kicks the ballots out or rejects the ballots, we make that stack to set aside to be duplicated on an exact ballot like that. And we have 2 people that are duplicating the old ballot or the unreadable ballot onto the new ballot that can be duplicated. One person reads the vote markings on the ballot to the person with the new to be duplicated ballot, and that ballot is marked exactly the same. When that process is done, they switch places, and the one who marked now reads to the other one to proofread to make sure that the ballot is exactly correct. And those people are 2 political parties, they're not the same. And then those new ballots will be the ones that are put through the tally machine. We're not counting them by hand, we're processing by hand, but putting the new ballot through the tally machine. And our plan is to do tallies on time and to certify on time. The certification date would be June 13th. So the voter doesn't do anything different than they usually do. They vote their ballot, put it in the envelope, sign the envelope, and send it to us. And when it gets to us is when there's more process.
Okay. Any other comments? Explain to me chain of custody of your ballot.
Okay, and I'm going to let Becky speak to that. We've had our conversation, and she knows each step.
Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Becky Sterndahl, Elections Manager. Is there a specific portion of chain of custody you're interested in? All of it?
All of it.
From,
From the time you prepare the ballot, it leaves Clackamas County election, and how that happens to the printer, how
Okay.
it's mailed, how you receive it.
okay. So we generate every ballot in Clackamas County. Every ballot has a unique identifier, making it so it cannot go through the system more than once. So we generate every single ballot, all 300,000+ of them here. We upload them on a secure FTP site to the printer because they are extremely large files. The printer receives them as a complete ballot. They don't do any programming or creation. They hit print is what they do. They print the ballots. They package them by ballot style. Ballot style is the precinct, and then precincts can have multiple districts running through them. So the style, you can have A, B, C, and D based on what districts you live in that precinct. So they package them by those ballot styles, then they deliver them to our mail house in Portland. And then the mail house, we send them the file of registered voters along with the information that gets printed on the envelope you sign. We have staff that go and help facilitate. They insert the ballot and the envelope you sign, and if there's any other pieces of information, they insert those into the envelopes, the outside envelope that comes to you, and then we go with them to the post office to drop them at the post office.
So it's the post office and not the mail house?
The mail house prepares them and takes them to the post office in a truck, and we go with them.
Okay.
We go with them to the post office, drop them at the post office, and then it's our partner, the Postal Service, who's in charge of them until we receive them back, or they go into a drop box where we pick them up. And then, so we pick them up from the post office because it would be an excessive burden on the county mailroom to receive 28 trays of ballots. So we go pick them up in the mornings from the post office, or our teams pick them up from the drop sites here around the county that we have in all the communities, and they bring them to our office. It's teams of 2 people from different parties that collect the ballots. They bring them back, they bring them into our facility, which is uniquely wonderful in our opinion, because once they enter our secure area, they do not leave until after the retention schedule is done 2 years after the election. Not every county has that opportunity. So once they come in, we run them through the scanner machine, the sorter machine that takes a picture of the side of the ballot where you sign, so we can check your signature against your voter registration signature. And then they move on. If the signature matches, they move on to be opened. If the signature does not match, if we question it, it is looked at by at least 4 sets of eyes before we send a letter to the voter, letting them know that there could be an issue. Everything that we question, the voter gets a letter. So they have an opportunity to address that. They move on to being opened in the next room. They flow through 3 rooms. They move on to be opened by teams of 2 to 4 people from different parties to remove them from the envelope, flatten them out, get them ready for scanning. The method we use for that is when the team receives their tray of envelopes, their batch of about 125, they turn the envelopes upside down so the voter's name is down. So as they remove the voter's materials from their envelope, they can't inadvertently match a vote to a voter's name. So it keeps that anonymous. Then they flatten out the materials and prepare them for scanning. They move on to a scanning room where we scan them into machines that cannot provide us with any kind of information at a contest level, only how many batches they've seen, how many ballots they've seen, and from what precincts, which allows us to be able to start scanning prior to Election Day because we have no access to any kind of results at that point. At that point, they are put into boxes and marked with their batch number. There's a batch number that follows them all the way from when we check the signature through scanning, so we can reconcile that every ballot that's come into the building has been processed all the way through. And then they go into storage for their retention schedule.
Thank you. Sherry,
You're
follow up?
Or recount. We will do 3 administrative recounts after
So
the election.
what percentage triggers a recount?
Well, if the race is too close,
What percentage of,
it's
It's 1/5 of 1%.
of 1%.
1/5
But the state
of-
tells each county which 3 races to hand count, to make sure that our hand count is the same as the
that's
machine
after the
count.
fact?
That's
Yeah,
a
that's
security
your
measure.
quality control after, that's, okay. So tell me something. On the issue of barcodes, there's 3 barcodes per ballot in Clackamas County,
Yes.
and they all have different information?
Okay, 1 barcode is the election, that it is.
Identified that it's this
What?
election, yes.
which election, and then the unique identifying number is, as our ballots are printed, that number is printed on it, and each ballot gets the additional number, so it's chronological. And that's really a security measure, because when you're scanning through a batch of 125 ballots and then you set the batch down, and you might have 3 or 4 batches there and you forgot which one you scanned, our machines will not ever take the same batch twice. So it can never be scanned through twice. And so that, and then the last number is the,
Precinct.
yeah, the precinct, which is the ballot style. And we had 447 ballot styles for this election,
447 different ballots, so went out, unique to the
different
area.
ballot styles, right?
So I'm curious, how many counties in Oregon use barcodes?
Hart, Verity, Tally system, which is what we have. There are 3 counties that have that system:
Oh, and those are?
Marion, Yamhill, and Clackamas.
Okay, that's interesting. So tell me, explain again, so it's very clear, the smudge ballots that have been kicked out by the machine that aren't readable.
That aren't what?
That aren't readable. What is your process for that?
Okay, that's the duplication process that I talked
Duplication.
about.
Can you explain that to me?
We did it first step.
Go
yeah.
ahead, explain it directly, exactly how it's done. One person reads it, and then another person marks it on the ballot, correct?
Correct. They're teams of 2 from different political parties. So one reads it, the other one marks the new ballot.
And then how do they
And
double
when that's
check?
complete, they switch. The reader takes the new ballot, and the one who marked it reads to her or him
Okay.
to make sure that they are correct, because that's proofreading. And then they are scanned through the tally machines.
I would think that this could delay your process. Do you anticipate that to happen or not?
It could delay our process, but we definitely have a full room, and we want to have a full room of workers for 2 weeks or more, whatever it takes, because we want, our normal process would be on election night, first results would be everything that we received in the office through the end of Monday, the day before. I'm not sure how close we're going to get to that because of this, but we plan to have our tallies at 8:15 for all of the ballots that have been scanned. And we will know how many are left of the ones prepared for scanning.
Okay. So election night, we expect to receive 2 numbers. Whatever the tally of the election is thus far that you were able to tabulate.
Right.
And then you will tell us how many ballots are left to be counted.
But not the exact number. It will
Okay.
be an approximate.
Approximate, because, well, the law changed, right?
Right, we are
Can you
now
explain that?
accepting ballots 7 days after Election Day if they have the Election Day postmark. So we have no idea how many might more come through the mail. We don't know what to expect, and you really can't predict,
No, you
because we don't
cannot
have any
predict that.
past
I
election to go
understand
from.
Gary Schmidt, I'll interject. What have you done to make sure that election results are timely?
Yes, elections is a core function of county governments. Only counties do it. Because of that, I have deployed 37 county employees who are taking time away from their normal business to come and support the elections office, to support this work. They're not all working every day, but 37 employees, including myself, including your county councilor, we're all volunteering to come and work and support elections. So that will help, we hope, clear up any backlog they may be.
And Chair Smith,
Yes.
one of your questions was, what have you learned from this?
Yes.
And I had that piece in what we've learned, because, of course, we learned that this should never happen. We should be building trust in voters. But this issue has really caused lots of questions. And the other thing I learned is I am in a really supported spot. And Gary Schmidt provided additional staff back at the I think, May 2020 election, which is when the pandemic started. And then again, when I had to tell him about it, his first question was, how can I help you? What do you need? And I just so appreciate that support. We are very fortunate in this county.
Yes, we are, and everybody would support and help you, although as electeds, we probably should not be counting the ballots, just saying for us, but
Well, and that's another thing. certain people can't be in the room. If your name is on the ballot, you could not be in there. So we've had some of those that have volunteered, but the answer is no, because it's really voter perception too. Because for me as clerk, when my name is on the ballot, I can be in the room because I am responsible for the work. But in the past years when that has been the case, I have not gone in the room.
Okay. One last question, I'm sure my commissioners would like to say something. Viewing of the public, you have an area that, with lots of glass, they can come in and see the process. How
Right.
do they access that?
They can just come in our front door and ask to do that, but there are some who schedule ahead, so we have an idea of who's coming. And we have a representative from both the Republican and the Democrat Party who recruit them and bring them in. Any hour that we're open for working, we can accommodate observers.
Now, during election season, are you open Saturday and Sunday?
It's not been determined yet.
We haven't decided that yet. It depends on where we're at on Friday. But we have in the past worked on Saturday before Election Day.
Okay, good. Well, that's all I have. There's Bill, do you wish to add anything?
No.
Okay, well, quit talking so much then. All right, now, my commissioners, we have some folks in the queue. Commissioner Scholl, you're up.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for the information. This problem is a external problem to the clerk's office, not an internal procedural problem. In any system where humans are involved, those systems are always subject to a glitch or a problem. It's evident to me that your office, Sherry Hall, has taken the proper corrective action to deal with this. The county administrator has given you personnel to make up for the extra man hours. So I appreciate your quick problem solving and corrective action on this. Question is that if you are going to arrive at 13 June on certification day all done, do you have, with the personnel that the county administrator has supplied, enough personnel to compensate for the added man hours you're going to need on this?
We have so many that county administrator has supplied that we, in fact, I had to tell him, you know, you can stop the requests because we have, you know, as many as we need. Part of it is space, but we have as many as we can use to fill our space.
Okay.
And there are some names that weren't called. So if we need more, we have that option too.
Okay. I'm convinced that the voters in Clackamas County can rest assured that their vote will be counted timely and accurately.
Yes.
And that I appreciate your efforts on this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Scholl. Commissioner Fisher, you're up.
Yeah, thank you. Sherry, I appreciate you being here and for all of you being here to answer these questions. So important that we have confidence and trust in our elections. It's a core function of our democracy. It's of highest importance. Some questions that I have. You said that Verity is the provider for 3 counties. but-
Heart Verity.
Heart-
Heart is the company, right? This is the type of
And
system.
Heart Verity, what do they do? I wasn't understanding that.
We purchased our tally system from them.
Okay.
So they provide the software and the machines.
And then how about is there any standardization regarding the printer? Like, how many counties use this particular printer to print the ballots?
We are the only county elections office in Oregon that uses that printer. And the way we decided to go with that printer is Heart certified printers. Because there has to be a certain quality of paper and toner and the certain pieces that go with that. The other 2 counties who use Heart Verity have printers, I think, in their own cities that can do the printing. Let me see here.
I mean, I'm interested in quality control. So my first question is,
Okay.
why do we use this printer, and why isn't there some standardization or some criteria, maybe at the Secretary of State's level, to say these are the printers that are certified, qualified?
It really has to do with the system you're using. And Hart has a printing guide, which is what the printer should go by. There is another piece that is a supply chain issue. And this was something that I talked to the top guy that I use in Hart, and they're in Austin, Texas. But he said, well, wait a minute. Did he say the paper was out of spec, or did the printer?
When I talk to the printer.
The printer? Okay. There's specifications for the paper that these ballots get printed on. This is what I wrote. Paper used that was out of specification should have been short grain paper. They ended up using long grain paper because the supply chain had no short grain paper available. The short grain is better for vote by mail because it's folded, and the folding with the grain, and it won't flick off toner if it's short grain paper. And the other thought is that the printer may have switched the original equipment manufacturer suggestion of toner, because the printer did tell us that their toner supply had changed 6 months before, and they were not notified.
Okay, so
So
what's,
we don't know all of the answers to that yet, but it plays into the problem of the printing on those ballots.
okay, so it sounds like, from what you're saying, the printer made some changes that resulted in the blurred ballots. But what's our checks and balances? Do we have a quality control that we have these standards? Is there any type of approval process? Do we check with the printer? What's our quality control process to make sure that the standards set out are followed?
That's something we will be working on. But the other thought with this is, when we started with this printer about 10 years ago, they were a Hart certified printer. But in 2020, Hart stopped certifying printers because they said it was just too difficult to manage, to make sure that their certified printers were doing every step in this process that needed to be done. So this is definitely something we will be working on, with how the printers should be doing their own quality control. But because of this, we are definitely going to want to know that. And that's one of the learning pieces. Do you have any other comments about that, Bill?
The printer represented to the clerk that they did the quality control in-house and that the ballots scanned. So it is typical for the print houses to do quality control on print jobs. Our understanding of their process is that as the ballots come out, they're sequentially numbered and they're separated by styles. They are folded and shrink wrapped and shipped to the mail house. So the quality control is done at the plant, as is done in so many other commercial businesses. But as the clerk said, that's something that we might want to think about going forward.
So if the printer was responsible for the error, I mean, we had an agreement, we're going to get these ballots, they're going to work, we're going to be able to put them through our scanner, there are standards set up, you are supposed to follow them, you did the quality control, then what is our recourse? I mean, my first question, before you answer what is the recourse, I expect this is a cost to our system. Do we know what the cost is of diverting the 37 employees, the extra time, the extra effort that this has taken? Do we have a dollar figure on that?
I have a comment to that. Of course, you heard me say that the paper has to be a certain quality. Okay, this occurred on Tuesday of last week. on Wednesday morning, a representative from the print company in Bend was in our office and brought 50,000 sheets of the 11 by 17 paper that new ballots could be printed on, because we ended up having to do that in our office. We could never do this every election, but we are printing our own ballots for duplication. And then the next day, additional paper was brought to us. So we haven't purchased new paper. We did buy toner. But there was one other matter with the printer that I would like Becky to speak to, because she's the one that has always been on top of this every election. And there were some other changes made at the printer that could have been part of it.
Typically, the printer has been very good at communicating with us, and they had a staff person that was on point on our project and shepherded it through and communicated with us multiple times during the print job on how it was going, what they were seeing, if they saw any issues. They were checking regularly through the print job what was coming off their printers. And if they had issues, they would call me, they would ask for authorization to destroy the piece that was not printing correctly, and then they would reprint that piece. So there has been a history of good communication and of them checking. We've not had a problem before in 10 years of multiple elections a year. That person did not shepherd the job through this time. We don't know why. We don't know yet all the pieces of it, but that's a conversation probably for after the election, and we get this taken care of. And as far as costs, part of that's driven by what the turnout is, and we won't know that until after.
As of yesterday at 2, the turnout was 12.48%.
Yeah, don't we have an idea of what a turnout typically is during a primary?
We really don't. We did look at the turnout for the last 4 primary elections, 2 of which would have been governor and 2 presidential. And the turnout was between 26 and 50 point something percent. So it just depends really on what's on the ballot to drive people to vote. There's no money measures. The governor is a big thing. There's many candidates for that. But we don't know what we're going to have come Monday or Tuesday at 8. It's a prediction we can't make.
Okay, but it does seem that we could have potentially a range of costs, depending on how many ballots, that we could estimate between this and this. Do you have that number?
And we're also very keeping track of this printing error that's causing a lot more work for us. All of those hours are being tracked.
Yeah, so I would be really interested, and I'm sure our commission is as well, as what the range of potential costs will be.
And Attorney Bill Cloran, we've already talked about that, because at the end of this election, we're going to put the summary together that would include all of that, and you'll get that.
Mm-hmm. And then as far as we have 37 staff that are being potentially deployed to help, you are pretty confident that all of the ballots will be remade and put through the scanner by the time of certification on June 13th. But what is the contingency plan if it isn't going to be done?
There's no way we can miss that date. Election dates are set in stone, just as the laws covering elections are, and we will do it if we are working 48 hours at a time. The election will be completed on time.
So there's no backup?
No. And we are used to that.
Well, but you're used to it in a time when you're not having to remake all the ballots and run them through.
That's the extra work with this election. In many elections, there's extra work with different pieces, depending on, what happens.
So how can we assure the public that this will be completed? I guess, this is a question maybe that the commission should opine, that we have regular updates, that we are having information regarding what percentage of the ballots have been processed. I'm just concerned about our confidence in our elections and how, if we don't have a backup plan. Because
All
you
we
have
can
limited-
do is
you have
give our
limited
word, because we will
space.
do it.
You've said you have limited space of which to process the ballots.
what I meant with the limited space is we can't bring in everybody that wants to work because we have to have space for those people. And our room has a certain amount of tables. There needs to be some distancing, not the 6 foot like we had 2 years ago, but we will make it work. And that's all we can do is give our word. It can be questioned, but we will be done on time.
Okay, well, that's all I have for now.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Yeah, I just, one thing that public should know is that the Secretary of State's office manages, to some degree, really all the elections, and when there's ever a problem, they are consulted. So that's something that everyone should know. Similar to, a number of other jurisdictions, when the state runs something, they're subordinate to that. So in essence, the fact that as I read the article in the pamphlet media and the quotes from the Secretary of State, I have relatively confidence between the county's elections office and our staff and the additional staff that we provided here, along with working hand in hand with the Secretary of State's office, that we have this problem relatively under control. And I am sure that a vendor, whether it's Hart themselves as making the equipment or it's their printers, are going to do everything they can for their confidence of their business operations, that they're going to do their best to make sure something like this doesn't happen again. But we know, and everyone does that. I just want to say thank you to the administrator, the Clerk Sherry Hall, the clerk, all the staff, Becky, your presentation today as well, all the people that are working, all the volunteers that are working, and making sure that we do this as timely and as accurately as possible. So I appreciate that. It's unfortunate. This stuff does happen. I come from the manufacturing world, and I can make every analogy or any analogy you like, but when you see like a recall from a manufacturer like General Motors or Honda, and you say, oh, all 2020 Honda, not all, but 2020 models of a certain VIN number are going to be recalled, and you find out why. Well, they actually know which vendor made which piece, thousands of parts in a car, and they realize that one supplier had a little glitch in their operation. Does it reflect poorly on Honda? Hopefully not. But in the end of the day, the tracking and the ability to find the problem and the troubleshoot the problem is something that we got to have some confidence in the system. They'll get behind it. And I've done a lot of troubleshooting in my life because sometimes those problems aren't really realized. And as a purchaser of product in making components and so forth, I order a certain part, and one day the part that I get delivered, same part number, same everything, different vendor, inferior. And you find out the hard way, and you got to make the correction. So it's the state of the world we live in, and I'm just pleased that the adjustments are being made, and hopefully we'll do this as timely as possible. I'm sure, and I appreciate the dedication to keeping our election systems and the results sound. And the other thing that gives me comfort is that every ballot will be in the possession of the county as a public record for over 2 years. So if there's any kind of a recount or question, the original ballots will be there if there has to be any kind of duplication or question. So all the backups are there, and that's the beauty of this system as well. So thank you.
And one comment to that, with the administrative recounts that the state assigns to each county, for that recount, we will use the original ballot with the bad barcode, not the reproduced ones.
Interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Savas. Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for coming here today and being transparent about the process. And when glitches happen, the problem solving that you have to do in order to make sure that the integrity of our elections are clear and are maintained. I know a number of folks who, through the years, have worked at the friends who I know of who do this work, and actually had a conversation with one of them last night, and it was very reassuring for me for them to tell me the process that you just described about how you're looking at ballots and double checking and marking, and that it is extremely methodical. It's straightforward, and the kind of folks that do this kind of work believe that it is something integral to our democracy and are doing an excellent job making sure that our elections are running appropriately. So, but I think it's great that you came here so the public knows that things are being taken care of and that we can trust the outcomes of this election. So thank you.
Thank you, and I'm going to just interrupt for a minute because with my excellent attorney here, I've seen him raise his finger a couple times, so I want to see if you have any other comments you want to make.
The only comment that I would have following up on Commissioner Fisher's question, there was one part that we didn't get to the end of, and that is that we are tracking the costs, and I have been in contact with your very, very capable and respected county council. And when the election's over, this is not necessarily over.
Yeah, and we can't speculate at this point. We'll just have to see how it plays out. Thank you. I have one quick follow-up question. Has any of your elections people visited the printing house in Bend? Becky? Okay, good. Thank you very much. Recently?
I did, I believe it was May of 2020.
That's
I
fairly
checked.
recent. I would encourage anybody to go down and visit the elections process. It's very, very interesting. There's a lot of components to it. Paul, you're up.
Yeah, I forgot to say one thing, and that is that when I first became a commissioner, I got the chance to get a tour of the elections office well after the election. And in the viewing rooms and the way the elections office is built and structured, which the taxpayers here made an investment in and previous county commissioners did, very impressive, is very transparent, let alone all the cameras. So everything is so secure, and I just want to just let people know that this is not counting in a back room. This is very, very transparent. Anyone can go to the elections office in the public, and those hours are for public viewing of the election. Sherry, can you just speak to that a little bit?
Okay, we are open from 8:30 to 5. Sometimes we work late. But observers are allowed to be in our office all of our open hours, and they can watch the back, or they can be in the front office because we have people answering phones and reissuing replacement ballots. There's things that go on, and they can observe any part of it anytime we're open.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, I was down Friday afternoon, spent quite a bit of time down there. You took me on a tour, showed me how the smudged ballots were identified with the piles, how they're segregated into piles, how those are kept, and then showed me through the entire process. And then I watched for quite a while in the viewing area where the public is allowed. People came in, some people, and they found it very interesting. I think once you go in and take a look at what's being done in Clackamas County, your angst just goes from here to, oh, okay, we're doing an okay job. And I do appreciate you coming here to talk. I'd like you to sit here a little bit longer, just in case we have some people on the line. Tony, I don't think we have anybody in the room testifying during this.
Don't have anyone present in the room, Chair. I do have 2 registered to speak during public comment online.
All right, then I'll go ahead and start the public communication portion of the agenda shall be limited to county business, which are properly the object of board consideration and should be nonpartisan in nature, as the BCC is a nonpartisan governing body under Oregon revised statutes and county code. Testimony is limited to 3 minutes. Comment shall be respectful and courteous to all. As a reminder, you can email submissions for public communication at bcc@clackamas.us, and these will be accepted as part of the public record. However, we will not be reading them at the business meeting due to time constraints. I will now open the meeting for public testimony. I don't see any in person. Tony, who do we have online?
Madam Chair, my first registration is Deb Barnes. Ms. Barnes, please state your name and area of residence. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Deb Barnes. I am from Milwaukee. My question is this: why do we have an attorney for the county clerk when we already have one on staff for the county? Is that not a duplication of expense for the citizens of Clackamas County?
Is that all, Deb, that you want to say right now?
Well, I am concerned because this seems to have happened. We've had similar mistakes, and I'm not blaming them on anyone, but I'm trying to figure out why we continue to have some concerns coming from the most sacred of all of our agencies when it comes to voting rights. My concern is, how do we make sure that we do not continue to make or have mistakes made in this department when we really do treasure our right to vote? And as a voter who has voted in every election, I'm tired of seeing this issue of having concerns about our elections happen in Clackamas County on a semi-regular basis. And that's the only questions and comments I have. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Deb. First of all, Bill Cloran, you can answer, why are you there? And then Sherry or Becky can follow up.
Thank you, Chair Smith. The reason that we have separate counsel is because the election function is something that needs to be conducted free from any appearance of influence. As the special counsel to the county clerk, I work for the county clerk on election matters only. That doesn't mean that I don't talk to Mr. Madcore. I talk to Mr. Madcore pretty frequently. The Board of County Commissioners has things come up in the elections process, as do the commissioners, that are of specific concern to the county. They are political substantive matters independent of the election law, but involved in elections where the county can and should have a political position to take. What having special counsel does when we have to go to court on these kinds of things, and the advice is that I can go in and represent the elections perspective only, free from any influence. Mr. Madcore, on behalf of the county, can go into the court and represent the substantive position of the commissioners, which the commissioners were elected and given the authority to put out. And there's no question about where the advice is coming from.
Thank you, Bill. Sherry, do you have a follow-up?
Well, I love the situation of having Bill for elections. He knows things inside out that he's always the answer man for us. And he's been doing this for about 11 years. Right. And actually, he and Mr. Madcore do talk a lot, and I think they both appreciate each other's knowledge that they can share and work through issues. I think it's perfect to have this, and it was actually first suggested by our state election director a couple years before it happened. And it is really good to have this situation.
Okay. Thank you. Tony, any other callers?
My next caller is a Mark Johnson. Mr. Johnson, please state your name and area of residence. You will have 3 minutes.
Mark Johnson. I live in Malala. So what I'm hearing, okay, and I'm going to come at this from a manufacturing systems analysis because manufacturing is a lot of my background. You've got multiple layers of vendors involved in this. The printing house is actually in Bend. From what I have been able to research, the shell company that owns that is registered in Washington, not Oregon, which isn't illegal as far as I know. But then we seem to, looking at the printing, what has happened, I would say there's very little quality control, at least in terms of manufacturing. It's kind of hard to believe that they printed 300,000 ballots and weren't doing batch testing to determine if the barcodes would read. Again, I'm not interested in assigning blame. My statement is just that it would appear that the quality control across the board and multiple layers of vendors is lacking. It wouldn't appear that since this place was essentially decertified by heart, that nobody's looked into it since then or visited. I mean, maybe I'm wrong on the timeline exactly, but it sounded like that was all 2020. Seems to me like there should have been a little more process for quality control in place. Thank you.
I guess that goes back to the question, what have you learned from this?
Well, we've learned a lot, and the quality control is something we've talked about a lot, and we will be putting some thoughts together. Our first priority at this time is to get the election
I agree.
completed accurately and on time.
I agree.
But this matter will be dealt with.
I'm sure that you'll come up with something. Tony, any other callers?
Madam Chair, I do not have anyone else registered to speak. If you would like to speak, please use the raise hand feature, and I will call on you in the order received. Madam Chair, I do not have any hands raised.
Thank you. Public communication portion of this meeting has ended. You're free to go, or you can sit there and listen to us opine. It's not necessary, but I want to thank Clerk Sherry Clark, Bill Cloran, and Becky for coming forward and giving us the information that we need. I don't want to waste any more time. I want you to go back to the elections department and start, counting those ballots.
Well, thanks for giving us time to share a lot of things about this. You know more now than you did, and we'll share more later.
Thank you very much for coming in today.